Okay, this is a video going over what we discussed this week in class, which is the word problem about interest rates. And it's also a little bit about long division, only done a little slower so that you can follow along and hopefully it'll make more sense. Let me start with a blank slate. First thing we did is we figured out what our interest rate formula is, and we're not going to go through that whole process here, but we came up with an interest rate formula that was very similar to our other rate formulas. In this case, it's the whole dollar amount times the interest rate, which is going to be some amount per year or per month, per some period, usually a year. That's going to equal our interest dollars that we're going to be paying per period, in this case per year. So once we have our formula, and by the way, this should be saved in your formula folder maybe, or a list of cheat sheets, and this should be your interest rate formula cheat sheet, or an index card, which I'm not really a fan of. I'm more of a fan of keeping a separate notebook or folder for these examples of how to use each formula. Okay, so anytime I have a formula, I rewrite the formula with blanks like I just did for each variable, and then I go back and I read the word problem to find out which of these blanks I have information for. So the first thing is, in the word problem, the doctor wants to borrow $450,000. So that's the whole dollar amount that's either being borrowed or lent. He knows he only wants to pay up to $42,750 in interest per year. Now that has nothing to do with how much of the loan he wants to pay back, or how much of the $450,000 in principal he wants to pay down a year. This is just the amount of interest he's paying per year for the privilege of being able to borrow this money that's not his. In other words, it's the amount of money that the bank's making for lending out its own, for not having the use of its own money, because the doctor is using its money. So now we have two of them filled in, and now obviously this is our missing whodunit person. So now we know it's in the library with the candlestick, but we don't know who done it, and we're going to call him Mr. R for rate. So now I'm going to rewrite this as an algebra problem. I'm going to get rid of the dollars. 450,000 times R equals 42,750. And in algebra, we now need to get the unknown man R alone, but he's connected to 450,000 by a multiplication sign. So I need to get rid of the 450,000, and I do that by applying the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So I am going to divide each side by 450,000. $450,000 divided as the denominator on the left side, and 450,000 as the denominator on the right side. And that is going to then let us do this. We're going to cancel out these 450,000s. That canceling out is a simple way of saying 450,000 goes into the numerator once and leaves R, and 450,000 goes into the denominator once. So 1 over 1 times R is R. Now similarly, I can reduce this side of the equation, the right side of the equation. 10 goes into both the numerator and the denominator. I know that because they both end in 0. So if I divide 10 into the numerator of 42,750, I'm left with 4,275. Same thing, I have to divide into the denominator too. If I divide 10 into the denominator of 450,000, I'm left with a new denominator of 45,000. And now I have a slightly smaller number for my division problem. So now I have 4,275 divided by 45,000 even. Okay, so that's the algebra part of it. And if I were just to take this fraction and convert it into a decimal, and then convert that decimal into a percentage, in other words, if I were to go like this, and have something here and something here, and then I converted that into a percentage, that would be my answer. Easy enough. If you could use a calculator, that would take you about 3 seconds, but you can't use a calculator because you need to practice your long division. So now we are going to do our long division side of the problem. Okay, let's remember the denominator is the thing going into the numerator. So the bottom is always going into the top. So let's write our number. Our bottom number is going into our top number. $4,275. 3 things to do with long division. First thing, put your decimals in the dividend and also in the quotient. Then you're done with decimals. Now, add some place values after the decimal. That's the second thing. Third thing, round off the divisor. That's this number. I'm going to round him off to 50,000. And the next thing we're going to do, very important, is we're going to say, okay, can 45,000 go into 4? No. Can 45,000 go into 42? No. 427? No. Can 45,000 go into 4,275? No. Can 45,000 go into 42,750? No. Can 45,000 go into 427,500? Yes. So I'm going to put my little line there, which means there's a 0 here because it could not go into 4,000.